we continue our coverage on the U.S. elections, where Republican nominee Donald Trump and Democratic nominee Kamala Harris are locked in a tight race to be the 47th president of the United States. SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena joins me for more as we unpack the situation. A very good evening to you, Ms. Sophie. Thank you so much for your time. Before we get into matters further afield, I mean, the situation that is being monitored by the border management poster really speaks to some measures being in place to assess it. What do you imagine the impact to be on the movement and the goods there, should this temporary measure be extended? Because he's just, Dr. Masiapato has just explained that at the moment it's under control, but what if tomorrow morning it's not?
I think the problem will be supply chain. It is going to affect the supply chain. As you are aware that you are talking about trucks carrying goods and services, but also minerals. And therefore it is going to affect trade and investment, not only in South Africa or Mozambique, because when you look at these trucks, some of them, the goods that they have and the loads that they have, particularly of the minerals, they come as far as the DRC, because you know that the DRC is the country that has got lots and lots of minerals, particularly those that are being exported to countries such as China, with those minerals that are important in terms of the technology development. And therefore it will affect the supply chain, but also generally people to access services in neighboring countries. As you know that our neighbors, they do rely on South Africa for sometimes the medical help and all of that. And therefore, indeed, it is going to affect trade, it is going to affect movement of goods and services and people, and therefore it becomes a real problem. And I think that is why we were told this afternoon that there's going to be a SADC emergency meeting in Zimbabwe next week, where leaders of SADC will meet and discuss the elections in the region. But I think the main focus is going to be Mozambique. And I think it will depend, because when you go to such a meeting, you see, that is why it is important when you lead an organization. You have to be careful what you do, what you say as the leader of that organization. Now you have a situation where the president of Zimbabwe issued a statement on behalf of SADC and also the country, even before the Electoral Commission in that country was able to announce the results. And that did raise concerns from different people. And now he has to preside over this meeting. And if you want to resolve the issue of Mozambique, clearly you would have to invite representatives of people who are affected. In other words, on the margins, not necessarily in the summit. You have to bring in those who are causing all the trouble in Mozambique to engage them. Now, how are you going to do it when they perceive you as taking sides? And that is why leadership is, you have to act in a very cautious manner, particularly during election time. You often hear people saying, why this country is not congratulating that country? Why is this country not saying this after elections? I mean, many countries were under pressure with Botswana. Why are they not congratulating Botswana? They are aggrieved. You avoid to be quick to make certain statements, because they can come back and haunt you.
Perceptions are indeed important. What you do and what you say will come down to the election outcome of what is happening in the US, moving out of Mozambique to America. You've been watching these elections very closely. They've been described as neck and neck with no certain outcome. What is your perspective on those developments on the ground?
I think people are talking about neck and neck, or that phrase, because you want to avoid a situation where you are found wanting. because if you get it wrong, it will discredit most of the work that we have done, perhaps as a journalist, as an editor, as a media house, because it's quite tricky. We know what happened in 2016. And I was there, I was in New York, we were at Times Square, and the Hillary camp was ready to celebrate, even having a private gathering for women, because there was hope that Hillary Clinton will be the president of the United States of America. And therefore, if you have such a powerful country, having a woman at the helm, that will send a message to other countries globally that a woman can lead a powerful country. And therefore, other countries, you don't have a reason not to support women who are contesting the highest position in their respective countries. And therefore, I think since then, people are very cautious. So I think this time around again, yes, people might think that this is Kamala Harris. She has been in different spheres of state. She was a prosecutor, that's judiciary. She was in the Senate, that's legislature. And she is in the presidency, that is government. She has experience. But you can't take for granted that that will be a plus for her. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump. We know what transpired after he got into the office, and many Americans were aggrieved. And therefore, we may experience a situation where there's a pushback. And when there's a pushback, he might not get it. And therefore, people are ensuring that they are safe. But as our colleague in New York has pointed out, I think when those results from North Carolina and Georgia comes in, because here you have 16 votes and 16, it's 32, the Electoral College delegates. And that will give you a real lead. And also you're looking at Pennsylvania, which largest number, that is 19. And then you'll then look at Michigan. And Michigan, quite technical, as you had earlier on. Before the war in Ukraine, in the Middle East, perhaps Kamala Harris could have been able to pull it in Michigan, because you have the minorities there, and also Black Americans, and those people who are sympathetic to Palestine. I don't want to say the Arab lineage or people with that lineage, but I want to say the people who are sympathetic to Middle East. I'm getting distracted because I think if we can pull that picture on the screen, that's Kamala Harris visiting there. We saw earlier Donald Trump, and now it is Kamala Harris, the first appearance this morning. And 2 hours after Donald Trump went to a polling station in Florida, now we have Kamala Harris, and she is in Washington, and she will soon be making her way where they are going to have this place where they are going to watch as the results are trickling in. And there she's laughing. Maybe let's take a listen and just get that net sound.
Keep reinforcing the Department of Education and getting all the resources there. And Sage, I can tell you're really smart and you're working really.
I suppose the big question now, as we know that the stakes are pretty high, the big question, will America get its first woman president or a second Donald Trump term? And what that could mean, with many questions around patriarchy, misogyny, and what's at stake.
Well, I think, as I pointed out, in 2016, there was hope that you'll have a woman. And that would have been a great achievement, a historic moment. Even now, if she is able to get it, it is going to be a massive, massive story. This time around, that would include the fact that she's a woman of color. And therefore, it will be almost like when Barack Obama was elected to be the president of the United States the first term. And therefore, there's going to be that euphoria. But we don't know how will that last. As you know that with Obama, during the second term, with lots of issues, people were very disappointed, particularly the Africans, the Middle East, with the war in Iraq. And therefore, I think sometimes you get excited because the leader has been elected, but at some point in time, people do get disappointed. I mean, we saw it here on the continent. Some countries where people were excited, we have brought in new blood and new people, but after a year or two, people are disgruntled. Look at Kenya, those massive protests on issues related to tax. And they were very disappointed by William Ruto. You look at countries such as Malawi, and you can name many countries where there was euphoria when someone is coming in and later a regret. And that is why earlier on I was asking the former president of Botswana, Ian Khama, who was very, very firm in terms of saying that Masisi mustn't see a second term, that now we are happy with the new leader, a new sheriff in town. Are we not going to see you later being disappointed? And he said he doesn't think so because the current president is a human rights lawyer and he can't see him violating human rights. But that's the nature of politics. Yeah. Politicians can disappoint.
With a Trump win, I mean, as we assess the probabilities here, there's a level of some discomfort on what it could mean for South Africa. Is there a chance at all that the US will deviate from maintaining the bilateral and trade relations with South Africa? Because we've sort of got a sense of what it would mean for Kamala Harris when, for instance, more so as we look at what the Biden administration committed to insofar as South Africa and the continent at large.
You know, before he became the president of the United States of America, I think 5-6 years before then, you know that he was involved with some projects with the former Gauteng Premier Tokyo Skhwale, the apprentice, and Tokyo then did the same in South Africa. And at that time, there were talks that he wanted to visit South Africa. He wanted to start investments in South Africa. So the issue of investing in South Africa has been there in terms of Donald Trump. But then he got this ambition of contesting the highest office in the land, and that faded away. And during his tenure as the president of the United States of America, he didn't have that much interest in relation to the continent because he was saying that he's trying to undo the damage and the focus was going to be United States of America. So we don't know. This is a second term. And also the technicality here, you know that South Africa is hosting the G20. And you can't talk about G20 and you leave out the United States of America. So next year during the G20 summit, are we going to see the US president visiting South Africa? And if it is Donald Trump, will Donald Trump make it to South Africa? If it is Kamala Harris, I can assure you she will visit South Africa. She will attend in person the G20 because she was in Tanzania recently. She was in Kenya. She has been on the continent, you know, as a VP. And therefore, I can't see her not coming to the G20 because America will be taking over as the G20 chair in 2026.
Yeah. I suppose, of course, we are going to have to leave it there for now.